Halloween when you're in your 20s just hits differently. You're free from your parents' rules, no longer trick or treating, but still embracing the spirit of fun of the holiday. It's quite easy to get carried away while you're having a good time. But what if that fun Halloween night turned into a dreadful tragedy, altering your life forever? Sadly, this was the situation for a young man named Bryce. Now, let's explore and find out what happened to Bryce Borca. Our story begins in the state of Minnesota. Bryce Borca was a young man at the age of 23, and he was just beginning to start his adult life. He was described by his family and friends as a compassionate, gentle, and empathetic person, capable of brightening the spirits of those around him just by being in his presence. Many of those touched by his warmth were students at the local school where he worked. He took pride in teaching and mentoring young children who had come to affectionately refer to him as Mr. Bryce. On Sunday, October 30th, 2022, Bryce and his friends decided to celebrate the upcoming Halloween holiday by booking a party bus. For those not familiar, a party bus is kind of a tricked out bus, complete with glowing LED lights, comfortable seating, big sound systems, and of course, coolers for plenty of alcohol. Bryce, like many other 23-year-olds, was eager to let loose and have a great time with his friends. With the party bus, the alcohol, and the good company, the night was primed for making some amazing memories. And enjoy themselves, they did. Perhaps a bit excessively. Once the party bus experience was over, Bryce and his friends were extremely intoxicated. Too intoxicated to drive themselves home. So wisely, they called for a Lyft driver to get them where they needed to be safely. The Lyft driver arrived to pick up the young adults. However, inside the Lyft, Bryce was so inebriated that he tried to exit the vehicle while it was still moving. The Lyft driver dropped Bryce and his two friends off at one of the friends' houses on the 3200 block of Hill Ridge Drive around 2:08 a.m. Bryce's own home was actually a 45-minute walk to the east and located on the 3400 block of Promenade Avenue. Bryce began walking, and his friends assumed he was just making his way home. But things took a terrible turn. At 2:34 a.m., Bryce made a frantic FaceTime call to his friends, reporting that he was lost and he had just 2% battery life left on his phone. Bryce was able to share a location with his friends. He seems to be located within a wooded area near Highway 13, west and slightly north of where they were dropped off by the Lyft. His last known location was in the Fort Snelling State Park. The call ended abruptly after just 12 minutes, most likely due to his phone dying. After losing connection with Bryce, his friends went to the shared location and searched the area along the road, but eventually retired to sleep. The following morning, just before 11 a.m., they reached out to the police. The location where Bryce had gone missing was a vast expanse of woods, leading down to the Minnesota River where it meets the Mississippi River. Despite being in the midst of a major urban area, this territory covered thousands of acres, and it included dense forests, swampy terrain, and marshes. That particular October 30th night had been also bitterly cold. Over the subsequent days, the police, along with tracking dogs and hundreds of volunteers, combed through the woods in search of Bryce. They did find a tie that was likely his and a pair of shoes that likely did not belong to Bryce. However, no other clues or traces of his whereabouts emerged. Eagan police obtained cell phone records that indicated that Bryce traveled through a small industrial area near Highway 13 before heading into the heavily wooded forest. TV news station KARE 11 reported that surveillance video from a nearby business showed Bryce walking alone. In January 2023, Bryce's family offered a reward of $30,000 for any information about his disappearance. Sadly, this did not result in any credible leads. The police also reached out to local businesses and residents for surveillance camera footage, but their efforts yielded no results. In April 2023, the police provided an update. However, this update mainly cited the challenges posed by the high spring floodwaters, which hindered their ongoing search efforts. Despite examining more than 1,000 acres, they found no further evidence of Bryce's presence. One final note, throughout my research for this video, it was actually quite difficult to find specific information about the clues that the police did have. For example, surely there was a picture of what Bryce was wearing that night. Descriptions of what he was wearing was provided, but with all the celebrating on the party bus, surely there were photos of Bryce and what he looked like that evening. However, to my knowledge and my search skills, I could not find one. Nor could I find a picture of the tie that was found in the woods that was said to belong to Bryce. I also could not find a recording of the surveillance video of Bryce walking by himself through that industrial area. Of course, I'm not entitled to these pictures and videos, and the lack of access could all be because perhaps his family requested to not make it public. It just seems to deviate from what I've seen so far when it comes to missing people. It seems counter to trying to provide the public with information so that maybe it triggers someone's memory or implores somebody that might have knowledge of Bryce or what happened to him, imploring them to come forward. In August 2023, the Twin Cities Pioneer Press reported that Bryce's family had set up a nonprofit organization to honor his memory and provide support to other families who are coping with the loss of a child. This organization has since held the first annual Bryce's Blessings Classic golf tournament on July 18, 2023. The family also issued a statement. These last 9 months have been devastating to us and our family and friends. Through our faith and our will to fight on, we will continue to live each day in a way that would make Bryce proud. Multiple search efforts have taken place since last fall, using trained canines, watercraft, ground grid searches, drones, and water sonar equipment. The family also said these search groups have also covered much of the industrial areas adjacent to the river valley, as well as 12 miles of railroad tracks. They also added that searches will continue to expand until Bryce is brought home. Sadly, there is a crucial lesson to be learned from this story, and that is to always ensure that your friends get home safely, especially when there's alcohol involved. Bryce's friends were clearly also intoxicated that night, and they failed to recognize the inherent danger in allowing him to walk off alone into the dark woods. It's alarmingly easy for someone to become disoriented and lost. Tragically, it's probable that Bryce just became lost in the woods, as the police did state that they did not suspect foul play. Perhaps he might have just fallen into a body of cold water and met his demise. Or he might have succumbed to exposure on that chilly October night. His body may never be recovered. This story serves as a stark reminder that young people may sometimes make ill-advised decisions, but these choices shouldn't culminate in tragedy. Bryce's disappearance and presumed death were entirely avoidable. A young man once standing at the beginning of his adult life, full of potential and joy, has been lost forever. If you've made it this far and you're interested in more stories about missing persons and other mysteries, consider subscribing so we stay connected. Don't forget to leave a comment. I really value your feedback and all your suggestions. Thank you again for watching.